Hello and welcome back to my third tutorial in the React Native and TypeScript series. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the index files and some best practices to import and export the components in your React Native project. So I've cleaned up the folders I created in the last video, which I don't need right now. And I've kept the components folder in which I have three components where I've just added some template code for now, as you can see. And then I also have the screens folder where I'm going to create a new folder for each screen, because I would like to have multiple files for each screen so that I can keep my UI, business logic, types, styles, and all other stuff completely separate from each other. So for now, let's create folders for two screens. Let's say sign in and home. I also have a config folder where I'm going to write the navigation code in this navigator file. I already have a template code here, and later I'm going to use the React navigation library and put the navigation logic in this file. So let's create some files for the sign-in screen. So for the UI code, I'll create signin.tsx, and for my business logic, I'm going to create a hook file called use signin.ts, and for declaring the types, I'm going to create types.ts. And you don't really need to worry about these files right now, as I'm going to explain them in the coming videos. So I've written some template code here in this file. Like, I'm just showing a simple text for now, and in the other files added an empty export, so there is nothing in these files. And I also created this files for home. I added styles.ts here in home, as I want to separate my styles because there will be a lot of styling in my home screen. But in my sign-in screen, I don't need a lot of styling. That's why I haven't created a separate styles. So right now I don't have any index files here. So I'm going to show you how we import files first in the default way. And you might already know that, as we have done imports. So let's say I want the text input and button component inside my sign-in screen. So let's import it. So as you can see, we're using a path here to import the files. Like, by using dot dot slash, we're going one directory up. Like, from sign-in screen, I'm going to this screens directory. And then one more dot dot slash, I'm going one more level up to this src directory. And then I'm going to components folder, and then text input, this file, and from this file I'm importing my text input component. So now I can use that component here. I can't see anything on the app screen right now because I haven't used this sign-in screen in my app.js file. So as you can see in the app, I'm using the navigator. I've imported it from my config folder, and since my navigator has an empty view, we don't see anything here. So let's say I want to show my sign-in screen now on my app. So let me import it here. Yeah, and let's say I also want to show my home screen. So yep, you can see that this is sign in screen and this is home screen, because in sign in screen we've shown this text and in home screen we've shown this text, so both are visible now. Right, in my navigator folder, using dot dot slash, I had to go one level up to my src folder, and then from src I had to jump to screens and then sign in, and then sign in .tsx file. So the component which is exported from sign in is imported here in navigator as sign in, and we are showing that. All right, and same for home. Let me just do this for components as well. Let's say I want to show a text input and a button in my sign in screen, so let's import those. Yeah, so as you can see, we used two dot dot slashes here because we had to go two levels up. Since we are in sign in screen, this dot dot slash would be to move out of this sign in folder to screens folder, and then the next dot dot slash is to move out of screens folder to src, and then from src we move to components and then the button file, from which the default export is imported in this sign in screen. Right, so let's add this here. Yep, as you can see, both are here now. There's a text input and there's a button which does nothing for now. So for every component we need to write a one new line. So imagine if you have hundreds of components in your project and you need to use 50 of them in almost every screen you have. So it's really not ideal to write so many import statements in one file, right? Even for screens, the same thing. If we have hundreds of screens, so we can't just write a one line for each screen, right? So let me show you how to minimize this code into single line by using index file. Let's create an index file in our screens folder. And in this file, I'm going to import my screens and then export them in a combined object. So what I did is imported both my sign in and home screen from their respective folders, and then I created an object and put both of the screens inside it and exported it. Right, there's a better way than doing this. We can minimize this code further, but let me just show you if this works first. So in my navigator file, let me remove this code and just write and import all the screens in just one line of code like this. So if I write this dot slash screens, yeah, I just need to write dot slash screens because I have an index file in my screens folder which is importing whatever is required from that folder, right? So now we can import whatever we require right from here. So let's say there are 100 screens, I only require two of them. So I only need to import two of them like this. And the rest I don't need. So I don't have to import them, right? And then same way I can use them here, just like that. Let me save and check. Yep, it's still working, right? So let's do the same thing for my components as well. Let me create a new file, an index file, and then let me import button, text input, text, and export them. All right. Now let me change the code. I don't need this anymore. Import from two levels up and then components. Yep, just components. And then I can import whatever I need here. I need button and text input. We can also import the text, right? But we don't need that here. Save. Let's see if it works. Yep, it still works fine. But as I said, we can, instead of importing all the files and then export them, we can just minimize this code further. So we can import and export the file in one single line. So let me just rewrite this code again. Export default as button from button, export default as text from text, export default as text input from text input. So from text file, I imported the default export from that file, and this is a default export, right? So let me explain what this default is. So let's say I also define a separate. So now this is crashing because I exported them as these names. So I need to use these names on in my while importing, right? So I've written button and text input here. We need to use the same name while importing. Okay. So let me explain what this default is. Okay. So let's say I also want to define a separate function in my text file, and I want to export it so I can use it in other files. So let's say placeholder. All right. So if I want to export this component, then I need to write export here, and the main my text component I'm exporting as a default, and this is not a default, this is named export. So if we want to use this, we need to import it with the same name as this function. So as you can see, I can have one default exports in a file and multiple named exports. I can write another function for something else like light text. So there are two named exports in my text file now, and one default export. All right. So let me show you how to import all this. So let me just import in the standard way. Text from components text. So this is a general way of import. I'm not using index file to import here for now. Okay. Yeah. Yep, this works. It says this is my text. That we've written that in here. So this component is showing now. Right. So what if I want to show placeholder text in my home screen? So I import it by just like this. So the named exports can be imported like this, and the default export outside the curly braces. And we don't have to really name the default export as same. We can say anything, like I want to say, so even if I give any name, it's going to work because it's a default export. It knows what the default is, right? So I can give any name to it and it will work. But this should have the correct names. So we can do the same thing in the index file as well. All right. So let's do that. Since I'm exporting the default in an object where I can also add the named exports like this. Yep. So I also need to name the default export, right? Because this is an object of multiple export. So I have imported the default and named it text, right? Default as text. So now if we want to use this text, this default import, we need to import it by this name only, otherwise it won't work, because we have finally given it a name, because we are exporting it with other components as well. So let me save this, and then in my sign in screen, from my components I can import text. Okay. And then I can import the placeholder text as well, right? Just like that. And let's also try to use that. Yep, it works. We can see the placeholder text here. Even if you see, when you import React, we import the main default export React, and then we can also import other stuff like use callback, use state, or whatever. Just like that. These are named exports, and this React is a default export. So I hope you got the basic idea about how import and export works in JavaScript in general. We can further improve our code because we still need to write the whole path here, right? While importing them using dot dot slash dot dot slash. So we went back to the screens folder by using these two dot dot slashes and then jump into the components folder, right? So let's say I have a complex project structure with lots of folders, inside folders, and so on. So if I have to jump out of 10 folders to access something, then it'll be a mess. This is so not good at all. So I want the components accessible without moving into folders with these dot dot slashes, because it is confusing when we have a lots of folders, right? For now it's just two, but if I have to move out of 10, then I'll have to keep writing them like this. So we can get rid of this using a plugin. So let's install the module resolver plugin. So this is the repository and you install it. So now once this is installed, we also need to let Babel know that we want to use this plugin. So in our babel config file, so let's add some code in this file. We want to let Babel know that we want to use a plugin. So in my plugins array, I'll add my plugin which I just installed. And I'll give them some aliases. So let's say I write screens here and here. I give my path slash src slash screens. So this screens will determine this screens folder inside this src. All right. So let's see how we can use this. So now in my navigator, I'll remove this dot dot slash and just write screens. All right. Now let's refresh it. Yep, it still works. So as you can see, we can add aliases here, so we can use it without changing directories. So for this, I'm using this alias. I can do the same for the components. Dot slash src slash components folder. So this will denote this path. So I can use it in my screens. I just need to use components. I don't need to give this dot dot slash, right? Alright, so it's giving error right now because we need to tell TypeScript that we are using module resolver, right? Because TypeScript will think this is a node module, because just like React, it will think that components is a node module and it will search in the node modules folder for this component module, but it won't find it. So that's why it's giving an error that it's not found in node modules. So yeah, I need to tell TypeScript that I have used an alias here, which points to the actual screens folder, and this is not really a module. So for that, I'll go into my TypeScript configuration file, which is this tsconfig, and there is one paths property here, this one. So I need to uncomment it and then add the same aliases which I gave here as well. So screens, I have to provide an array here, and the path would be, so we have to use this base URL also. So base URL would be dot slash, which would be the root folder, and then after dot slash src slash screens. So this would be my complete path, and now screens would point to the actual screens folder. All right, so let me do the same for components. Same src slash components. So components will point to the actual components folder in my src. All right, so now as you can see, the errors are gone from here as well as here, right? So let me just restart my node server, and let's rerun the app. Yep, so it's working now, right? So we finally are able to do this. Like as you can see, it points to the right index file inside the components, right? And same for the screens. So cool, this looks much better, isn't it? Let me also add the config folder in my ls. Config, and now in my tsconfig file. So for config, I want to use, I don't have an index file, right? So I want to use this navigator file directly. So what I would do is I would write slash star here, and then same star like this. So now I would be able to access a single file inside the config folder. So let me show you how. So in my app.tsx, I'm importing this navigator from it, right? So what I need to do, I can remove this and just keep this config slash navigator, right? If you write this, it will give you all the file names, just like that. And then the navigator, the default export is imported here from the navigator file, because I have a default export inside this, right? So that's how we can do it like this as well. So it works great. I guess that's it. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll be back with a new video soon. Thanks a lot.